Hello, everyone who's listening and viewing and watching us. Hello,
Hi, everyone.
Caroline.
Bonjour, Christopher.
Bonjour. Um, this is episode number 7 of our Dandelion Reflections. And if you have not watched the previous episodes, uh, go ahead and do it because I think they're very interesting. And we had some very interesting topics there. And today's topic is societal expectations on genders. And I'm sure this could go anywhere, right? So let's see, Caroline,
Yes.
where we will take this. And yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead because I'd like for you first to say why you picked that one.
Oh, why did I think it was we both that picked this one.
Yeah, we both
Uh,
agreed, but yeah, you put that on the agenda for episode 7. Why is that?
okay. Uh, so there's let me start this way. Um, I remember being a child, and I had uh, this guy in my class I think it was in first or second grade, and he was playing with dolls. This
Mhm.
boy, and I remember this was in their mid 70s. So this was something very unusual at that time.
Mhm.
So then people were talking about him, but he was a nice guy. Oh, well, duh, of course. And then when a few years ago, when I studied a course about psychology, they m- in a book there was mentioned a test they did, um, a survey. They put in they let in adults into a room with a child, and there were several toys lying around there, and somehow the adult gave the appropriate toy, depending on the gender of the child, to this child to play with. Uh, and so I think that I made of this that children, they don't care
Mhm.
from the beginning. They are programmed by the adults around them what it is that is appropriate to play with or not. So, Colleen, what do you make out of this?
Yes, I grew up in the same era as you did, and I had a similar experience. And I think, well, I think it runs really deep. How societies have developed representations of what should a man look like or woman look like or behave like, think like. And in order to do that, then it starts in childhood, right? So people are dictating basically what a boy should be or should behave like in a girl as opposed to a girl. And it's very binary, obviously, and we know it's not um, representative of the whole spectrum of human experience and identity. So we're starting to finally open our eyes to that and having an open mind. But I saw that in my childhood too, that there was a discomfort when a little boy, whether it was my brother or another boy, would be interested in dolls. There was like this unease in certain adults, not everyone. Certain adults thinking, "Oh my gosh, you will become gay," and I'm like, as a kid, you hear that, and it's like, first of all, what is gay? It sounds like a nice word. It's a nice adjective. Who doesn't want to be? And then what's wrong with that once you find out what that is? And third of all, it doesn't mean that it will lead to whatever. I mean, a child is
Hmm.
born a certain way and it's a human being. And um, in having different toys, non-gender toys, it's a way to explore. And my own kids, I have 3 sons,
Hmm.
and I was really happy that they were interested in anything: trains, balls, dolls, tea sets. We played together with all these things. So it's part of the exploration, but I think there's an unease in the current structure that we are evolving in still, about having people not fitting a specific mold. Because when you make everyone the same, you can control them more easily, right?
Right.
The prototype of the quiet, nice girl, as
Hmm.
opposed to the active, assertive boy. If people step out of those categories, then there might be an unease in people who are seeking to control, who are uncomfortable just being. So yeah, I had that same path as you, very similar in a way. Yeah.
Mm. So, what could the origins be of this if we
Hmm.
roll back the timeline
Right.
very
So
long?
I gave a lecture actually on that last week to my residents
Oh,
about the
cool.
gender inequalities and the war of the sexes, or sex war, whatever, and how to overcome that, how to clean up the messes of all these gender inequalities and the structures that created them. And I used the work of French anthropologist. Her name is Françoise Héritier, and she said that basically it started from noticing the differences between men and women, especially around gestation and childbirth. So when women showed they were pregnant many millennia ago, there was an unease because it was mysterious. How's that happening? Like,
Hmm.
it's almost miraculous. There's this human form who gives birth, who gives life. And that was scary to the men, because obviously men could not do that. That was an attribute typically female. So,
Oh, is it that why so many men get unconscious when they witness their children's
ah,
birth?
maybe it's almost a mystical experience. That's a good point. I had never thought about that. It's overwhelming, right? I mean, it's
Hmm.
like, I imagine being in that spectator. I have been as a med student, right, when I help women deliver, and it's been a very powerful experience. And I gave birth myself to my three beautiful sons, and it's hard to put into words. There's something very grounding, and at the same time elevating and mystical. But this can be scary because we can't really capture that fully, and there's a lot of unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. We can't control
Hmm.
the process, and so men, or certain men, eventually gradually developed this need to control women's body, and thinking that this would alleviate the fear of death, because I think all fears are based on the fear of death.
Hmm.
So controlling life to alleviate the fear of death and all fears. So patriarchy developed. Okay, patriarchy is a fear-based structure. It is not about just men. Yeah, when we are against patriarchy, we're not against men. There's a nuance here. But yes,
That's very
historically,
important. Yes, thank
patriarchy,
you.
it is an important nuance, right?
Mm.
Being against patriarchy means being against this structure, this power structure that seeks to suppress men who are considered less powerful than those who create the patriarchy, and all women and all the other groups, vulnerable groups. Or so targeting patriarchy is not targeting men. I just need to repeat that, because I ran
Hmm.
into some conflicts with certain men in my life who thought, oh, you just hate men when you say you're against patriarchy. No, patriarchy affects men too. Patriarchy is a fear-based structure developed to control, and it affects men. So with patriarchy, you had the witch hunt. So women who were intuitive, creative, who gave birth, they were midwives, they were burnt as the stake, because
Crazy.
it was crazy. It was a way to again maintain power of, of the patriarchy. And within patriarchy, you have all kinds of institutions that develop: the church, so, and that unfortunately kind of created damage because the church sought to eliminate women from those institutions and their contributions, and created more suppression of their rights. So there's a great book that really is enlightening, and I don't know if anyone has heard of, well, a lot of people have heard of it, but The Gospel of Mary Magdalena. I think it's a great, or Magdalene, it's a great illustration of how women's voice has been suppressed, and
Hmm.
just to maintain the interest or support the interest of patriarchy, because church has become, or Catholicism was highly patriarchal. But she was an apostle who was a great contributor, and she was not the prostitute that she was made into. That was just another way to try to eliminate women. But even if she was, I mean, who are we to judge? I think she had a clear message of love and compassion, and but those scriptures were partially burned, and at some point there are monks who uncovered them, and now it's been published. So we need to go back to this. We need to rewrite history,
Right.
and to find the roots of the patriarchy, and dismantle it. That's the only way, because those inequalities will persist, and it's getting worse, I'm afraid.
Mm. So something has made all this possible. And I could imagine that even before people came up with churches or religions, organized religions, um, there was this idea, okay, we have to go out and hunt. We have to go out and fight other tribes. We have to fight wars. So
Right.
somewhere in that, somewhere in that, I'm sorry, somewhere in this line, then someone came up with the idea that no, we can't have weak men doing
Mhm.
this. So, in my understanding, in my imagination, I see men have been trained to not feel emotions, or at least in a very
Mhm.
um, low level of emotions, which then could make this possible that one second. Hmm. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Um, so where was I? So this could have made all this possible.
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah,
Mhm.
I lost my thread here. Help me out.
It's a great question, Christopher. And I also struggle with this. I wonder, I'm not a historian, I'm not a sociologist. So my perspective is, limited. I'm, with all my intersecting identities as a woman, an exer, a mother, working in an environment that's still male dominated, right? Or I should say male value dominated, but there are still technically more males too. But yeah, when I say male dominated, I refer to the toxic masculine values,
Hmm.
such as in patriarchy. I think from what you're saying, I believe that maybe people became disconnected from the earth and from nature, and created the material world. So from spiritual, divine to material. And in the material world, there's a lot of ego, there's a lot
Hmm.
of separateness, right? And is it part of our process as a human species to really move away so far from our true natures, only to come back to it? You know,
Yeah.
like many things in life, we and throughout our lifetime, the goal is to go to become more of ourselves, but before getting to that point, we go really far from who we are to find ourselves again. So I don't know if that's similar to human species.
Beautiful. So, like if we see the universe going in circles
Right.
or in an upward spiral, let's say, that maybe is
Yes.
even better.
Yes.
At some point there's a point of destruction, right? Destruction of the old
Right.
and
Yes.
birth of the new, of the
Hmm.
new. Uh,
Yeah.
so where between these
Hmm.
2 points are we? What do you think?
Wow, that's a great point because yes, what you're saying is like in order for birth to be, there needs to be destruction. So birth is a form of transformation. So and throughout our lifetime, we go through various birth, death, and rebirth cycles, and that's the whole cycle of our whole lifetime on this earth as a human form. But in our lives, we go through that like symbolically,
Hmm.
right? Metaphorically, when we grieve, when we shed layers of ourselves that we no longer are and that no longer serve us. So we go through that. So as a society, what you're asking, or as a human species, where are we in that process? Like, I think we are in the death row,
Yeah.
so to speak, or death, or we're agonizing and we are dying slowly and then eventually we'll be reborn. I hope. But that would be kind of the next step based on that paradigm.
So what I hear you saying is we shouldn't be afraid of this death.
Oh, wow. Yes, you are right. And even if I believe that cognitively, experientially, it's harder for me to not fear it. Although I
Hmm.
don't really fear my death, I came to terms with it, and that was so liberating. Um, I think I fear the death of our, um, well, what do I no, I think the civilization will collapse. It's
As it is now.
the huh?
As it is now, and it will be reborn.
Yeah, because the trajectory is taking in so many places in this world, it's very frightening. But yeah, it has to be reborn. I think. Yeah, I think I'm scared because I don't want to witness the death and not see the rebirth. I think that would be sad.
Oh, you
If
will.
I hope because yeah, yeah. Well, let's hope that this will lead to a transformation.
So,
Yes.
um, so if we go back some steps
Yes.
before, um, so in the world we still are in the society we still see ourselves in. Um, I think we agree on that women have to be like women and men have to be like men, and everyone who doesn't feel to want to be conform with this is some sort of an outsider, uh, putting a lot of mental health issue pressure, and with that mental health issues on both sides, emotional men, uh, like myself, crying in school all the time, um, or women who, just don't want to fit into those roles
Yes.
of, I don't know, giving birth, being the caring housewife. Um, so how can
Yes.
people that do not see themselves in these roles, how can they cope? How can they still be find the way to be
Mhm.
to lead
Mhm.
their life?
Yes, that's a great question. I would encourage people to try to seek for role models in literature and history. Uh, what we learn in school and history is so skewed. There's an
Hmm.
agenda, and there's the patriarchy's agenda. We are not taught about those women or those gay people who did wonderful things. We're taught about these men who won those wars and
Yeah.
this and that, right? Throw that away. You have to go find your own readings and your own source, and also creating safe spaces, noticing who might be like you or similar to you and who you could share with, and support each other in becoming who you are really.
Hmm.
So I think that would be my advice. um, and just also daring to be oneself. Life's too short, and we saw it with Gabrielle, right, who we
Yes.
interviewed in the fifth episode, and all the transformation he's had after embracing who he is, but he survived
Mm-hmm.
oppression. He tried to fit a mold, but it comes at a price. I think starting to notice how all the intricacies of the power structures. Earlier, before we started the podcast, I was telling you that I had a reflection this morning about my own education and how they talked about different structures in our classes, and they talked about matriarchal societies.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it was presented, or the way at least I absorbed that, was that, well, it was like these ancient primitive, and this is what a matriarchal society looks like, but patriarchal is like that. So therefore in my head was like, okay, it came after, it's more evolved. But then there was a discrepancy, something I felt uneasy about, and they never said, for instance, we are living in a patriarchal society.
Yeah, yeah.
And with my eyes of a 50-year-old woman, an educated professional and more enlightened, and then I realized, and who has suffered all kinds of injustices as a woman, by the way, I realized, oh my gosh, what a blind spot, or what a conspiracy
Mm-hmm.
to maintain the status quo, not naming the reality so that people would think all is good.
Yeah.
We don't, this is not us, but no. And also when I went to med school, it was
Mm.
it was in 1996. Yes. That year, 60% of the class was female. And I was like, we took care of the gender gap. I didn't say
Yeah.
that in those words back then,
Mm.
but I thought there's equality. I don't need to
Mm-hmm.
be a feminist like people I know, older generation. And it was also, by the way, pejorative to be labeled a feminist. You're just
Mm-hmm.
hating men. No, feminists are
Oh.
equalists by nature.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to advocate for their rights to have the same rights as men. It's not wanting to surpass men. It's like, just having the same rights and access to same
Excuse me
possibilities.
if I take that up there. Um,
Yes,
is
please.
there fear of losing power?
Okay, great. Excellent point. This is all described in this book. Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique. It's
Mm-hmm.
dense. I had to start it and go back to it later when I had more brain power. My kids were not so little. Yes, there was actually sexual harassment, which was not really named that way when it started. It was called the problem that has no name, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or the problem that has no name was maybe the fear that women would take the men's jobs in the corporate world in America. So that's part of it, Christopher. You are right. So there was this fear that by women gaining something, men would lose.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe on the surface, but on a deep level, no. Everybody wins when everyone's equal. Look at
Well,
those
of course.
societies.
Yeah. But that's not what you want to see when you have power. And
Right.
let's just remember that all the major religions' holy books were
Yeah.
written by men
Right.
because
Yes.
men were the only ones that were capable of reading and writing because they were able to afford being scholared in church schools or in
Yes.
religious schools. And so, what do you expect?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, of course, they see with these new ideas, they see their power being nagged on.
Yes.
And no, no, this can't happen, right? So there's, yeah.
Yes. The men's club, was
Mm-hmm.
threatened. And yes, absolutely. No, you're right. It was threatening. And also, they were programmed that way. It was like when you were born and you see your parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts fitting those stereotypes, you see women belonging at home behind the oven and whatever the sink and peeling potatoes all day
Hmm. Yeah.
and wiping kids' nose and changing diapers.
Mm-hmm.
And the men could go smoke cigars in this room and have talk about politics and then be the breadwinner. And
Yeah.
we need to rebalance that. Actually, a lot of men like to be part of the household stuff, and a lot of women love to get out of the house. And we were talking about the divine feminine and divine masculine at some point, right, in one of our
Mm-hmm.
podcasts. And We all have that in us. It's just in different ratios, but we need to express that. We cannot just shut down the feminine. Talking to you, men, it's nice to be sensitive. Women like to see men
Hmm.
expressing and being connected with their emotions. But in women, we can't shut down our masculine side, which comes in the form of ambition and drivenness and organization and rational thinking. I'm not saying women are rational, but the feminine side could be more intuitive. They both work together. They're both
Hmm.
important.
Well,
Yeah,
men aren't that um, free from emotions either.
of course not. Yeah, but
No human
they were
is, I
not
guess.
allowed to express. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
and I see the damage of that,
Mm.
and it creates trauma because then you shame your son for not crying, or you shame,
Oh,
it,
yeah. Hmm.
it just perpetuates the narrative that men should not show vulnerability. But there's strength in vulnerability. It takes courage to express one's vulnerability.
Exactly. Exactly. So if we, um, so what can we do?
What can
What
we do?
if we now
Hmm.
if we now decide this is we don't have to. I'm just thinking changing the whole society is a big mountain of a task,
Yeah.
right? So maybe that might put off people. Just, oh no, I can't change anything with that. I can. It's
Hmm.
good. Why not give up? It will always be that way. That is obviously not the right way to go. So what can we do in the small world of our own,
Hmm.
individual world of our own,
Right.
to
Yes.
not participate in this
Hmm.
patriarchal system?
Yes, absolutely. I think on a smaller but no less important scale, it starts with us, right? Like, what values do we embody? Do we model?
Hmm.
Equality, respect, compassion, non-judgment, non-oppression. It's all about human rights. We should seek to do no harm ever, to not violate anyone's fundamental rights, and we should support those rights. So being leading life by example, and also on a larger scale, like seeking to protect other people's rights or advocating for them, being vocal about injustices, and getting our information and meeting like-minded people and finding those safe spaces where we can create synergies and have a ripple effect and increase the vibration of the world by being compassionate, supportive, and wanting collaboration rather than antagonism.
And what, of course, we touched that already. We might uh, meet the occasional individual who feels threatened
Yeah, yeah. That's
and fights back.
we can say, well, tell me more.
Mhm.
Can you point to
Yeah,
me?
that's isn't that a powerful question?
Yes.
Because this takes away all this fear of not being heard, of not being
Right.
listened to by
Mhm.
anyone, right? Tell me
Yeah.
more. So we can just try to understand the other individual's world.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then by talking about it, our fear
Hmm.
lessens, hopefully.
Yes.
And
Yes. Absolutely.
then maybe we have a better chance to actually talk about our own world.
Yeah.
And maybe then there's this insight.
Yes.
Oh yeah, right. You're right. I've never thought about that. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So we don't need any war. Gender
No,
war.
we don't. Actually, we have more in common than we think,
Oh yeah, we do.
right? It's like our bodies, yes, they're different, okay,
Hmm.
biologically, phenotypically, but it's the world of form. Fundamentally, we go through the same emotions. We want the same things in life: to be accepted, to be loved, to be seen, to be heard.
Hmm.
Yeah, we want to experience joy. We want to be in connection with each other. These are all the fundamental needs that we all
Hmm.
have. The body is just a cloak. It's just, you know, the spice to the main recipe. That might be different.
Right. Right. Wonderful. So you said you mentioned seeking role models.
Yes.
That's very important. Um, I'd like to add setting boundaries
Yes.
if we see something that we think this is not okay.
Yeah. Yes, I
So
agree.
I have no idea why uh, the most recent election in a
Mhm.
big country in on this world comes to my mind.
Oh,
But
dear, which one? Where
uh,
is that?
hmm, so setting boundaries is, I think,
Hmm.
very important. This is not okay.
Yes.
Well, where did we lose it on that way, on that road?
Yes. Wow. You were talking about something that kind of meets where my reflections were this morning.
Hmm.
It's about taking responsibility. You know, there's little accountability and even less so collective responsibility, unfortunately, in certain parts of the world. And I think it starts with being accountable. So yeah, and if people don't are not holding themselves accountable, we need to hold them accountable and setting boundaries and saying this is
Hmm.
not okay, like you said. And yeah, we need to, but in order to know those limits, we need to be comfortable in our own skin. We need to be grounded in our values and
Hmm.
always um, staying alert. Yeah, and not letting anything slip. And no, we don't tolerate bullying. We don't tolerate lying. We don't tolerate abuse,
Hmm.
um, fraud, rape. And another thing, Christopher, another example, I had a resident in my lecture this week told me about something shocking, and even in medicine, and what is covered in terms of medical care. Just to tell you how far these inequalities go, a woman goes to see a doctor. She has vaginismus, which is a condition where during intercourse, the vagina, the perineal muscles contract painfully. So
Hmm.
there are various causes to that, but basically having intimacy is painful. The treatment for that is to insert dilators and to have some kind of re-education of the perineal muscles. The insurance wouldn't cover that.
Okay.
On the other hand, insurance covers Viagra. So this woman just
Hmm.
wants relief from her pain while the guy has fun and is covered with this Viagra. Do you see the disconnect?
Hmm.
I was so shocked. I'm like, we have structural genderism even in medical care. So we need to target not just governments, but all the structures and all the institutions that
Hmm.
are making those differences between men and women in an unfair way, in a
Hmm.
unequal way and discriminating way.
Yes, that would be wonderful. This is a bad but wonderful example
Right.
for um, the mountain that we want to move by picking one
Yes.
stone and taking this detail,
Right.
which is important, and
Yeah.
fighting against it. And
Yes.
piece by piece, we take down the mountain.
I agree. That's how I see it. Everyone in their own like environment, whatever they encounter, could deal with whatever issue arises. I mean, this one I'm going to write about it because I want the community, the medical community, to be aware of it.
Very
I
good.
won't be aware of what's happening in a factory or in retail because I don't work in those environments. But others who do should keep an eye open and call people out on these things.
Yeah. And by that, by doing this, you find yourself allies, right?
Right, right.
And then suddenly you're not alone anymore.
Yes.
And there are more that join you. You become
Yeah.
more powerful as a group.
Yeah. Yes.
And yeah, people will find more issues until
Hmm.
a good conversation, a good discourse about a respectful discourse about this topic will hopefully lead
Yeah.
to a change. It doesn't. Yeah, death can be peaceful. A death of a
Mhm.
of a society of a patriarchal society can be peaceful. Doesn't need to
Yes.
be
Yes.
um no.
Doesn't
I
have to
can't
be
think.
chaotic,
Yes,
hostile,
thank you.
violent,
Wonderful.
right?
We take that.
Just like the transfer of power, which will happen hopefully more peacefully, apparently more peacefully than 4 years before.
Hmm.
And what you and you, to connect some ideas from our talk, like let's say we do authorize those treatments for women, it what will it take from the men's pleasure? It would wouldn't it be wonderful? Why can't we promote both? So ultimately everyone will benefit. And I'm not attacking men who take Viagra, by the way. I think it's wonderful that there's that
Hmm.
available. At the same time, we need to support women too, so
Of course.
it's like, to me it was a major discrepancy and disconnect. So I feel like, yeah, this is something I feel like I could tackle because it's my line of work. But other people, I'm sure, I've observed many other things, and yes, together we can make this death more comfortable,
Hmm.
peaceful, like you said, and ready for the rebirth and the coming of a new light.
Wonderful. I think you would like to share some book recommendations and even more.
Yes, I have a bunch at work that I haven't brought with me, but so the one in particular that has been very eye-opening for me was the Vagina Monologues by Eve Ensler.
Hmm.
The foreword by Gloria Steinem in the version I had really talks about how even the architecture in the church
Hmm.
is actually, and all
Yes.
the rituals around baptism are actually a way that really made patriarchy more salient,
Hmm.
and removed power from women, even around childbirth. It's just symbolically been turned over to men or patriarchy in those institutions. So that was very eye opening. And I have also this book, Women Who Run with Wolves, with
Oh.
the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And really, it talks a lot about a form of the divine feminine, and reconnecting with our wild nature. So I
Hmm.
think that could help in those tough times to channel her, let's say, anger and fear and disappointment. There's also Goddess is in Every Woman. And I think there's the book also, Goddess is in Every Man. I think that's the first she wrote, but then she was asked to write about that one, or vice versa. I can't remember.
Uh-huh.
But this is interesting. This is very inspiring because we have role models, which are the archetypes, the goddesses and the gods, and we can also be inspired by them. Um, yeah, I talked about the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and the Feminine Mystique. And also, there's another book I have at work. It's called Unplugging the Patriarchy. I can't remember the author, but I
Hmm.
recommend it too. And yeah, so
There's a lot of, excuse me, there's a lot of symbolism in that, don't you think? Unplugging.
oh, yes, yes. And yeah, exactly. It's exactly about it. We need to unplug it. And also,
Speaking
you
of
said,
Viagra,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
inappropriate
no, that
joke.
was. No, they talked about the witch hunt too in that book, and it's very, yeah, it was very eye opening. Oh, another book that I loved was A Woman's Worth by Marianne Williamson. Beautiful.
Hmm.
It was really really good, very empowering. So yeah, I think I found models within those authors. Some of them were women, um, and it's helped me in, yeah, opening up discussions with other people in my environment who are
Hmm.
supportive of a more, you know, equalitarian world and peaceful world. Yes, we need to
Right.
maintain those connections and nurture them.
Wonderful. So, uh, any more things that we would like to give to our listeners and viewers?
Yes, I think people should know that they have more power than they think. Okay, everyone who feels hopeless right now is empowered, and I'm certainly one of those people. From time to time, I get into that space, but I bring myself back because I'm like, what is it that I can do minute by minute in my life?
Exactly. Wonderful. I was going to say that. Start where you are
Yes,
with
yes.
what you have right now.
Yes, and then it can go into larger scale, like how do we consume, and I see people saying, oh, I'm no longer buying this brand of car. I sold my stocks, whatever. I don't have those. So, but it's like making a statement like, I'm not going to
Exactly.
encourage those corporations that keep
Hmm.
making the rich richer and oppressing the rights of their workers and women and etc. So
Hmm.
that also is a way. But in your daily life, just by having core values that are aligned with harmony, peace, love, joy,
Hmm.
then you know what to do. Follow your intuition, trust it.
Yeah. And I'd like to add and remind everyone of setting boundaries. That's crucial.
Yes, setting
You don't.
boundaries is an act of love, even to the person we
Thank
set
you.
boundaries with.
Exactly. It is. Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you for. I thank you for bringing this up. I had an encounter with a fellow student of one of my kids, and um, in both the parent and the child, I saw this. I'm not taking responsibility for my actions, and that was very saddening to see it in both
Oh.
the parent and the child. And I asked myself, where is this going? And there, I love this picture of a box. Sorry,
Mhm.
of the box where this is where you should be, and if we're outside of this box, then everyone, both children and
Mhm.
uh, dogs and horses and adults,
Right.
should know you're outside of the box right now. You're outside of your boundaries. Uh,
Mhm.
Consider coming back, or this might be the consequences. And
Right.
that's very important. And even within this topic, when we see um, when we see someone being harassed, someone being mistreated because of their gender or whatever else, any
Mhm.
uh, discrimination, uh, no one should be alone there. We
Yes.
ourselves need to put boundaries, and everyone who's witnessing it should step up and set
Yes.
boundaries too, and become an ally.
Yes. Drawing that square around the people who need protection, because that's
Right,
protective. Boundaries seek to protect, contain.
right.
Yes.
Wonderful.
I like the square. Yes. It's a good image.
Yeah. Well, thank you for today. And dear listeners and viewers, we'd like to encourage you to leave a note or a comment, and if you'd like to, with what you think, how you experienced this in your life, and if you would like to add something else that we didn't take up in this episode. So thank you very much, all of you, for staying with us this long, and we're looking forward to, about making the next episode soon. So thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Caroline.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to all the listeners and
Yes,
viewers. Yeah, it was a pleasure to have this conversation today, the first of many, I'm sure. Well,
yes,
not the first. It's not our first, not our last, but it's going to be in the landscape for a while. So I encourage everyone again, yeah, to include comments and reach out and develop those connections and initiate a dialogue. It's very important. We can't stay isolated.
no,
It's Yeah, we have more power than we think.
become the light.
Yes, be a dandelion.
Yeah, exactly. All the best. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.